Alright, you know what? We're finally just gonna talk about this. It's been almost a month since Pokemon Legends ZA has been revealed, and now that things have settled down a bit, I think I'm a bit more comfortable giving a quick rundown of my thoughts on it now. To start, I was not expecting this. We all were expecting some type of Unova remake material or a Johto Legends game or something. Maybe even not called Legends. But nope, we got a Legends game for Kalos. I don't know a single person that expected this. And honestly, while I like Johto and Unova, I think this is actually a great idea and great timing. People were a bit nervous for Unova Remix after Sinnoh a few years ago, and seeing them just suddenly reveal a game like this instead, which won't even come out until next year in 2025, well, it seems like a lot of us are into it. Unless they suddenly reveal another game they're crunching out in 2025, then I'll get nervous again. But regardless, let's talk about this Legends ZA game. First, let's look at the title. It's pretty obvious ZA is probably going to connect the character AZ from the original Kalos games, so we may get some new lore regarding that character. I'm pretty sure this game isn't going to take place literally 3,000 years in the past based on its premise. So I assume we're going to see that very same character in this game and not a relative or whatever. I can assume that even if it's only 150 years or so in the past, the world may still be portrayed as recovering from conflict. It'll depend on when the war exactly ended and if there have been any other conflicts in that time. The sacrifices and consequences of a post-World War is a big part of the themes of Kalos, so it'll be interesting to see how they may approach this. Now let's get to what we do know about the setting. It's apparently entirely set in Lumios City. I imagine that the city will be portrayed in a way that's more fulfilling than in X and Y, where it was the main city hub, and obviously not representative of an entire game world, which was fine for that game. A game's world map being a giant city sounds pretty exciting for a Pokemon game, though it's currently in some kind of renovation at the time of ZA. So I'm not entirely sure of what it's going to look and feel like. The reveal trailer we got was also a little different from what I would have expected at times, having a very cyberpunk look presentation when showing the area. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be what it will end up looking like, rather than how it looks in the Legends game itself or what. Some fans have theorized that there may be multiple time periods shown, but I'm not entirely sure. I think going into the future beyond the core games is something we should avoid doing so directly, unless it's an outright non-canon spin-off. Because once you have something that's set in the future, you kind of have to tailor everything else to make sure it may not contradict that future and such. The exception may be alternative worlds that are futuristic, kind of like the world of some of the Paradox Pokemon we've seen, since they don't seem to be from exactly the same worlds as the main games. I mean, they are called Paradox Pokemon. So with that stuff, you kind of get free reign to do whatever, since it's not supposed to have a clear explanation all the time. That being said, the Legends concept is still pretty new to the series, so we'll see what they decide to do. I'm cool with it as long as it's good. This also brings us to the Z part of the title. Yeah, I know it's probably a play on the AZ's character name, but also, there's no way it's not related to Zygarde too. How will it play into the narrative of this game? It's almost certainly going to be like the Arceus of the game in terms of importance. And it was never done justice in X and Y, so I'm expecting the game to try to give it a grand sense of importance. Its relation to Xerneas and Yveltal was always kind of like order to their potential chaos. Kind of like an inverse to Palkia and Dialga being like order, but Giratina being chaos. I'm not sure how much of all the X and Y legendaries will be involved, but we know Zygarde has to be there, and it's gonna be a big deal this time. Going back to Lumios City being the main setting, and how it's clearly supposed to be the Pokemon version of Paris, Paris went through a vast renovation in the 1800s, and the impact of that era can still be seen there to this day. I'm not sure if they'll try to reference similar events that led up to that renovation when it comes to Lumios, but it's interesting to think about, because the backstory to a lot of Kalos is pretty dark, so it makes me wonder if there will be a bit of a film noir, or Renaissance style sort of approach to the art direction of the setting itself, considering the potential time period. It's definitely going to be quite different from what we got with Legends Arceus in that regard. The one thing I do wonder, however, is if we'll be able to leave the city for any reason at some point in the game. I'm not expecting for there to be too much map area for that, but it's not impossible. I'm not expecting Zygarde to just be hanging out underneath the construction of this city or something. So I'm expecting at least 1 or 2 instances where the play area is not technically in Lumios. There's also the question of how this may link to Paldea, which we suspected may be connected to Kalos in some way even before Scarlet and Violet came out. It's not impossible that the energy Zygarde puts out could be used to connect to how Area Zero works or something. I also see them doing something to justify the inclusion of terrestrialization in-game. But speaking of those types of mechanics, we know for sure that Mega Evolutions are going to be back. This is huge, and it inevitably leads to speculation of which Pokemon are going to get new Mega Evolutions. I think the most requested one is probably Flygon. Even on my Mega Luxury video, I saw a ton of comments from you guys asking about Flygon. And yeah, it was done dirty, considering it was originally intended to have one. Seems like a no-brainer. But in terms of how that series is going to go, I'm saving Flygon for a later date, so you guys are going to have to wait. For others, I've seen some fun concepts for Pokemon like Golduck, Zebstrika, Braviary, and I guess everything? It's a concept that everyone is always going to have ideas for, especially if their favorite never got a Mega Evolution. I think a better question here is, will they give the starters Mega Evolutions? And if so, which starters? The last Legends game mixed starters from other generations together, and I expect the same here. But will it be the starters available to you? Or will they just give the Kalos starters Megas? Because I'm not sure if the world is ready for Mega Greninja, to be honest. That thing would print a lot of money. That's not even factoring in potential regional variants. There's going to be a lot of new takes on old Pokemon with this one again. I think one of the biggest question marks for me are the human characters. And this is only as far back as the 1800s or even the 1700s. I'm not so sure if we're getting exact previous incarnation type characters in the same way as one may expect, as the setting is probably going to feel a bit more grounded still than Legends Arceus, where this type of trope may have worked a little better. Though Legends Arceus probably also took place at around the same place and time, rather than thousands of years ago that some people still suggest. Ancestors are of course a different story. We'll get to that in a moment. But that being said, I'm mostly referring to the playable characters, since they looked identical to the ones in the Sinnoh games. But one of them is shown being teleported to the past specifically, which I guess makes it a bit murkier continuity-wise. This has always made me question how strong the continuity of Legends Arceus was with the other core games, because clearly many of the regional variants from Hisui exist in those games, so at least a decent chunk of Legends Arceus' depiction of the Pokemon world is meant to be taken as canon. But it seems like they leave other parts of it more ambiguous. Basically, I'm wondering if Legends ZA will be less ambiguous with how much it connects to Pokemon X and Y's story in lore, since the concept feels a bit closer to home, especially if a Z literally appears in it. I'm also wondering how they'll actually handle the playable characters, since I'm not sure how they'll be able to do the fish out of water trope if the character isn't plucked from another time or world, assuming they still want to go that route. Continuing with thinking about the human characters, the ones I do expect to have ancestors appear are definitely Lysander's ancestors. I mean, you kind of have to with his connection to AZ being the descendant of his younger brother. Lysander is definitely one of those things in X and Y story that wasn't really given the full time and justice his concept deserved. Team Flare was only really done justice in the anime, and maybe the Adventures manga too. So ZA represents a second chance for the games. There's other characters and ancestors you can do too. There was even that Hex Maniac Ghost Girl that showed up in the dojo building in Lumios you can follow up on, even if it's just another Easter egg. but stuff relating to AZ and Lysander are the must-have characters to have in this game if you're going to have any sort of connection to anything in X and Y story. And those are my impressions, thoughts, and speculations on Pokemon Legends ZA. There's definitely more to say, but I can only speculate so much based off of a pretty short reveal trailer that intentionally kept most of its information very vague. As I keep uploading videos about subjects like Kalos, Mega Evolutions, and other related things, I'll continue saying things about what I may think or expect from ZA. But what about you guys? How did you feel about the reveal? What would you like to see what I didn't mention? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below.